So then came clashing and slashing of steel as the brave lass Matilda charged in full of zeal.
The spinners tell of spirits to whom this land belongs, and who belong to this land, if they belong to anything. They are our ancestors and our governors, our conscience when conscience fails, wisdom for foolish elves. We may pretend to live apart from them, but it is only a child's tale, made of childish dreams. Certainly. I'd love to. What would you like to hear about? In Morrowind, there was a nobleman by the name of Kelmeril Bryn, who had a very definitive view of how things should be done. Whenever he purchased a new slave, he had them whipped in the courtyard for 1 to 3 hours. Few slaves ever had to be whipped more than once. As the memory of their first day and the sights and sounds of other slaves' first days stayed with them throughout their lives. When Bryn bought his first Bosmer slave, he ordered his castellan to whip him only for 1 hour. The Bosmer, which Bryn had named Dob, seemed so much more delicate than his other slaves. He was clearly not suited for work in the fields, but looked presentable enough for domestic work. Dob did his work quietly and tolerably well. Bryn occasionally had to correct him by refusing him food, but the punishment never needed to go further. Whenever guests arrived at the plantation, the sight of the exotic and elegant addition to Bryn's household staff always impressed them. It was during this time that Bryn decided to take advantage of Dob's skills in archery and ordered him to tutor his son, Wodelic. For the first few days, the master watched Wodelic and Dob to be certain that the slave knew how to teach. He was pleased to see the boy learn the grips and the different stances. A month later, when he came once more to check on his son's progress, he saw Dob guiding Wodelic to shoot his arrow up into the air, high above the targets. "What nonsense is this?" Bryn snarled. "What about accuracy? You haven't taught my son a single thing about marksmanship." Dob bowed humbly. "Sedura, first Master Wodelic must become comfortable with the weapon before he need worry about accuracy. We learn this by watching the arrow arc in different winds." Bryn's face turned purple with fury. "I'm not a fool," he raged. "I should have known not to trust a slave with my boy's education." The master grabbed Dob and shoved him toward the plantation house. Dob, head down, began the humble, shuffling walk he had learned in his domestic duties. Wodelic, tears streaming down his face, tried to follow. "You stay and practice," roared his father. "Try aiming at the target itself, not at the sky. You are not coming back into the house until you do it." The boy tearfully returned to practice, while Bryn brought Dob into the courtyard and called for his whip. Dob suddenly broke away and scrambled to hide between some barrels in the center of the yard. Bryn began to bring down the whip down on his exposed back again and again. Wodelic's miserable wail drifted from the courtyard. "I can't, father. I can't hit it." "Master Wodelic," Dob cried back as loud as he could, his voice shaking with pain. "Keep your left arm straight and aim slightly east. The wind has changed." "Stop confusing my son," Bryn screamed. "You'll be in the sultry fields if I don't beat you to death first, like you deserve." As Bryn's whip rained blows down upon Dob, Wodelic's arrow sailed high before coming down in a magnificent arc. Bryn tasted the blood before he realized he'd been hit. Gingerly, he raised his hands and felt the arrowhead protruding out of the back of his neck.
Ragnar the Red.
He looked at Dob crouching under a wagon and thought he saw a thin smile cross the slave's lips. Just for an instant before he died, Bryn saw the face of an untamed wood elf on Dob. "Bullseye, Master Woodillick," Dob crowed.